everybody. My name is Tracy Welch. I am one of the co-producers and co-hosts of the LGBTQ Voice. Tonight's topic is LGBTQ history, and we have a couple guests. I have Andy Pollitt to my far left, and I have Leo Schick closer to me over here. Andy and I met a few years back when we did our 10-year anniversary of marriage equality in Massachusetts at one of our local events. And we're actually going to be talking about our history. He's quite involved. He was instrumental in marriage equality in 2004. He is also working on some audio videos of people that have lived through the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s of LGBTQ history. So if anybody would like to contact Andy, please do at silverbrookfarm@comcast.net. He's going to talk a little bit today about some of the history with Leo. And let me just say hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Fine, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Cool beans. So Andy, want to tell us a little about you and what's going on?
Sure. I'm from the area. What's wonderful is that we're actually in a building where my father went to college, and talk about a history. Being connected in the community is part of who I am in the New Bedford area. My family's been here for a long time. But as a gay man, we're sort of born in a dairy barn. A giraffe born in a dairy barn, meaning that we don't have a natural family or a way of disseminating information to another generation. And we had some friends, Leo and I know some wonderful people who have passed away, and with them have gone amazing stories. Just stories that are funny or informative, and I thought, wow, this is really just gone. And you kind of remember them, but it's not like the stories that your grandmother told you that you're going to tell to your kids and they're going to tell to their kids. We don't have those natural families. We might have families that we form, but we don't have that continued telling and retelling of tales. So I thought, well, why don't we record it? And I have a friend who's an archivist at UMass Dartmouth, and she thought it was a grand idea. We'll keep it on file. People can do research about it. We can know about where things were and what happened and people's experiences in New Bedford, Boston, Providence, and Provincetown, how it's changed over the years. And I asked them to tell me a little bit about their experiences, and it's fascinating. Hopefully, I don't influence the discussion too much, but I just asked the questions.
Plenty of time.
No, great. So what happens is that we talk, and they tell me their stories. And someone like Leo, who has had a full, rich life and has been very involved in many things, and they tell me their stories.
Sorry, Leo.
No worries.
Sorry,
So, a full, wonderful life. It's just amazing to hear how we've progressed. And I think the younger generation may not realize that some of the older generation has amazing tales to tell. And things that are living history, like raids at bars, or the fact that some of us were around during the puzzles time, or even marriage equality. Those are getting to be distant memories for people, and soon they'll be gone. So the idea of capturing those memories and keeping them as a history for us in New Bedford even is, I think, a wonderful project.
So since we're talking with you right now, can you tell us a little about the struggle with marriage equality in 2004?
Well, yeah, that's a great one. We were watching marriage equality happen, and my partner and I, we just happened to be traveling in Holland in 1999, and we saw the first gay marriage in the world. We were in Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
It happened at 12 o'clock at night. There were two guys dressed up as Dutch cheese girls.
Of course.
And I was as close to the mayor of Amsterdam as I am to you. And these couples got married. And we had Dutch friends, and they had said, well, let's go and see it. And this was before 9/11, so security wasn't a big deal. So I remember looking at Jeff, my partner, and saying, gosh, this is amazing, but we're never going to see this in the States. And soon Vermont started with civil unions.
Yeah.
And then marriage equality happened in 2003 when the Supreme Court of Massachusetts they said that marriage should be a right for gay and lesbian people, which was tremendous, the first in the country. I remember being at a Christmas party and talking with some friends and saying, look, this has happened, we're excited, but there's going to be a response to this. The pendulum's going to swing the other way, and we're going to have opposition.
Yeah.
again, we are giraffes born in a dairy barn. We don't have natural connections. It's not like a black family or a Jewish family or like for me an Irish family where we all have similar interests in that we have to find each other.
Yep.
And we're all over the place, gay people. So we had to organize. And during that party, there was 3 of us, Liz DiCarlo, George Leontire, and myself, decided that we'd form the Marriage Equality Coalition. And what happened during the fight for marriage equality is we were able to organize 1,400 people in the South Coast area. It was amazing. And we were able to change almost every vote except for 2. Gifford and Wareham and Korea and Fall River. We went before people. I think John Quinn, God love him, had a restraining order on me because he was the representative in Dartmouth. And we had people in front of him constantly saying, John, why are you voting this way? Do not vote for against equal marriage. And we worked and worked and worked, and it was an exciting time. And we felt that as we were organizing, that we were being watched by the entire country.
Well, we were.
We were. And we felt that in our area of Massachusetts, we had to do our part to change people's minds, the legislature. You remember that they were going to vote. They voted it through once, and it was going to go to ballot, just making a long story short.
Yeah.
And they were going to vote a second time
Yep.
to go to ballot. And it was so close, and no one knew, and we were all in the State House, and it was just, a big demonstration. And the vote came right down to the last minute, and there was just eruption when we won. But it was a long slog. And we started to organize in Taunton. And I remember our friends in Taunton getting together and organizing. And those are stories that I think are really important, again, to remember and to record and to talk about our struggle. Because some of the kids coming up, God love them, but that was just one struggle and many that we've had. But when we won in Massachusetts, it was a victory, I think, that really was a watershed for the entire country. Because from there, it was California, and then from California, it spread through the nation.
You would figure maybe New York or even San Francisco or somewhere would be first, but Massachusetts, I mean...
In California, Proposition 8, they voted it out.
Yeah.
They voted it out. And what we had said when we were organizing was that if they voted it down in Massachusetts, it probably would be another 10 or 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because then people would say in other states and other places in the country, look at Massachusetts. It was forced upon them, and they voted it out.
Right.
So we said we have to fight for it.
I'm glad. One of the things as well, audience, as I am one of the 4 adult advisors for MB Agley, and we actually spoke at Nativity Prep about a month or so ago. And those kids that we spoke to, the 10 and 11-year-olds, weren't even born yet. So we're talking about marriage equality, marriage passing, just kind of looking at us like, well, what do you mean? They don't even know that, they were born into being able to marry male to male. So keeping the history alive and understanding where we've come from. And every now and then at our youth group, we'll talk about Stonewall, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We'll talk about, the Pulse attack, our Puzzles attack in our own community, just to kind of let these kids know, what has happened. That, you think you have it bad, it's bad, but it was worse. Yes, it's still bad, but things were quite worse back then.
Tracy, can I just say, that some of these, some of our folks, LGBT community, remember days where bars were raided, and they were raided by police. Yeah. The police were not our friends.
Yeah.
The police were our enemies, and they would step over dead guys on the street, and it was just another faggot that was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And they could give a rat's ass. And could Leo speak a little
Definitely.
bit about those times and what it was like?
Yeah, please.
The times were rough. I mean, I came up in 1960. I was 18 years old. And I was still a senior in high school when I actually came out. So the only place.
High school. We talked about earlier that you lived around here.
Oh yeah, I've lived all my life in
Yeah.
New Bedford. I've worked all over the country in Canada, but New Bedford's always been my home base.
Yeah.
No, I came out, like I said, in my senior year, and in those days there was one dancing bar that you could go to in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. It was called the Holiday Inn, not related to the hotel chain. It was called the Holiday
It is
Inn.
now.
It was a neighborhood bar. It was a little rough around the edges. And a friend of mine said, I got to take you to this bar in Woonsocket. Anyways, we went, and guys would dance with guys and girls would dance with girls. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, you know. And Providence, there was one bar that was kind of half and half. It was a mixture. It was half gay, half straight. As the gay bars started to pop up in the next couple of years, a few bars opened in Providence. It was very dangerous because the police were not on our side. I can remember being 19 years old, underage, in a bar, not drinking. I drank soda, so I didn't do anything illegal at that point. But the lights would flash, and that meant get out of the bar as quickly as you can because the police are on their way. They were being tipped off by somebody in headquarters. Paddy wagons, I mean, like 3 or 4 paddy wagons would show up at a bar, pull everybody out under no pretense, just pulling them all out because they were in a gay bar. Yep. They would get them down to the headquarters, and from all accounts, from friends of mine, they would take either a rubber hose and whack them with a rubber hose, or take a nylon with a bar of soap and whack the hell out of them just to torture them because they knew the next day there would be no marks.
Yeah.
And I can remember seeing a friend of mine the next day, and he said, oh my God, they just beat the hell out of him. I mean, he was just, but he had no marks because it would just, you know, bruise for the 24 hours, and it was gone, so you couldn't say to them, you know, hey, I'm being brutalized by the police. And then when I went to college in Boston, I mean, I had a very good friend. He was a little older than me. He was 30-some-odd years old. I was about 19, 20 at the time. And he just took the wrong person home from the bar one night, and nobody had seen him for a few days, and he was a psychologist. And then they found him. He was dismembered in pieces under his kitchen counter. And when the police found out that he was gay, they said, oh, gay murder, we're done. No, not going to investigate it. Yeah.
It's amazing. Today, I definitely want to thank the New Bedford Police Department. Every time we talk about what happens in our community, we'll talk about the Pulse attack in a little bit. But when we did Pride before the Pulse attack, the police were at our corner at La Place. They were there all night long, just making sure that we're okay. Whenever we have events in our community, they always just walk by, hey, are you everything okay? You guys doing all right? And even at our Pride event, we hire a couple of police officers and they'll come around, so thank you. And I know in 2 weeks we have a show on LGBTQ violence in our community, and the chief police will be on that show in 2 weeks. So just to let you guys know, Eileen's off today. She's working behind the scenes on a lot of things for our community, and tomorrow night she has youth group. So at NB Agley, our Perfect Place Community Center at 484, Pleasant Street? Thank you, Pleasant Street. She'll be there from 6:30 to 7:30 tomorrow night. We actually started an 8 to 13-year-old group. So again, don't drop your kids off and run. It's parents with your kids that you need assistance, some social networking, or some support group. So Eileen will be there tomorrow at a Perfect Place Community Center. So Eileen, sorry we missed you tonight, but we'll see you. You and I will be together next week. So Gail says hello. I don't say last names very well. Hassan says hello. Brandon says, hi guys, thanks for keeping this going. So we have a couple of comments right now. Hi Monica, I know you're watching. I can see it. It tells me. But that's all we have right now. So
I just have to say that the New Bedford always was very understanding. I mean, some of the bigger cities were rough. I mean, Providence was rough. Boston could be rough, but not as rough as Providence. And but New Bedford, I think they understood. I mean, they kind of empathized with you. So
do you think it's because we have a huge melting pot here?
I think so.
That could be why.
I really think so. New Bedford was always more liberal than, say, Providence.
I mean, there's good and bad everywhere, don't get me wrong. There really is good and bad everywhere. I've just been fortunate enough here. I've heard stories, because we, again, our youth, I keep putting over here because one of our kids is over here. We do the New Bedford, Bagley, which is the Boston Alliance of Gay and Lesbian Youth, and we're all over Massachusetts. So when we go to Worcester, we go to these other places, and they're talking about the police do things to them and they don't care, and I'm like, what do you mean they don't care? How do they not care? Well, they don't. So the stories that we hear in other places, I bring it back. So again, I always want to, plug the pluses when we can do, because there's just so much negative out there right now. So we talked about what happens at the bars. So Kevin and I, one of our youth, were talking, and we talk with our youth quite a bit about Stonewall and what happened, and try to explain to them that June 28th in 1969 at a bar called Stonewall in New York City, Manhattan, had a neighborhood called Greenwich Village. And it was mafia owned. So the mafia would own it, and the police would kind of do their raids every now and then. And when they knew, a lot of the bars knew they were going to get raided, they just turned, like I said, turn the lights on and off, the police are coming, run, do what you got to do. Well, this one particular time, the police had already raided the bar three times consecutively. So this particular night, the police went in, and the bar didn't have an alcohol license, so that was their excuse this night. They were arresting the people selling the booze, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, at that time in 1969, you had to wear three gender, I'm going to probably find my notes now, 3 articles of gender-appropriate clothing. If you did not have it, so if a man was wearing a dress, they're arrested.
Yep.
3 gender articles of clothing. It had to match your gender. So they were arresting the patron. So as they were coming out the bar, they had enough, and they fought back. So 5 or 6 days, they had a fight there. So before the 5 or 6 days ended, the police ended up getting stuck in the bar and barricaded themselves in because the I'll say transvestites then, drag queens, right now we just say trans individuals. But back then, they were fighting the police. The police fled back into the bar to barricade them out and calling for backup. And then people would call their friends, and their friends would call their friends. Next thing you know, gays, lesbians, everybody was fighting for the rights, and that was like the biggest movement we've had in our country. So speaking about LGBTQ.
Sure. It's the first time.
First time. Yeah. So that's why when people say, well, how come all the prides are in June? That is why. Because the next year, they had a celebration in June, and next thing you know, you got a celebration, you got a celebration, you got a celebration, and that's how Pride basically started across,
Can I say, Tracy, I remember the first time that the police were at the Pride in Boston, and I remember being in the crowd, but you could hear this cheer coming down the street, and this roar, and the police were leading the parade, and what a change for all of us. And I think the whole crowd realized it, and they realized that it was a real sea change, that instead of being the ones swinging the clubs and dragging us out, they were actually supporting us and in hiring LGBT folks to work on the police force.
So I have a couple of friends that are police officers, and thank you so much, and any of the first responders. I've asked them if they'd like to come on the show and talk about their careers and stuff. And one of my friends said, Trace, I just can't. She goes, we're already sometimes targets ourselves just by being police officers. Now you add that tag on of being a lesbian police officer or a gay police officer. And she goes, I just can't do that. And I said, no, but I needed to ask. We want to try and bring people on our show. But I respected that. But you don't think of these different perspectives that are out there, We have several friends that are out there, and I, again, thank you all for what you do. So we talked about Stonewall. So we talked about earlier today about how do you know today if someone's gay or not? Well, you're on Plenty of Fish. You're on Match.com. What other sites are there, guys? Grindr. It's Kevin.
Scruff.
Oh, I didn't hear that one.
Oh, Scruff.
But back in the day, there was Signals, so I'm not going to be able to read them all. But I thought it was kind of funny that if you had a set of keys in your back pocket and you had it in your right back pocket, that meant you were a bottom. If you took your keys and put it in your left back pocket, your left, that means you're a top. So for you guys that don't understand, the top and the bottom is one man only did top things and one man only received bottom things. We talked about handkerchiefs. You had different color handkerchiefs. So you had your hanky in your back pocket. If you were in the left pocket, you were this. The same color blue. You were the right pocket, you were that. And it goes on and on and on. So you guys can probably Google that yourself and try and figure out if you like this or if you gave that. If you took this and you did that.
Tracy, were you looking for the drooling one? Was that the one that was your favorite? Was the drooling?
The drooling, yes, the drooling
heavy drooler.
Yeah, we were reading some of them that we can't say on the air or in our green room. But I thought it was amazing. And then something I had read earlier, and I wasn't able to find it to be specific for it, is like in the 20s and 30s, if you had a red tie and you were in the park, people knew that was the sign back then. So Andy and I were talking about, you're talking about the police going into the parks and...
There's, and Leo can speak to this too, that there were, it wasn't that long ago that before the internet, bars were always in rough areas of town. You didn't feel safe going to some of these places. I remember, and even the Mirror Bar in Providence was in a building that you didn't have a sign on it. It just had a number. You just had to kind of know. But the police would actually solicit guys. They would put a good-looking cop, young guy, in the park sitting on a bench. And if it was a cruisy area, you'd say that was the only way that you would be able to look for sex because there wasn't any other way. And you would sit next to the guy would be friendly, you'd start chatting, and you'd say, hey, well, come back to my place, and bam, the cuffs would go on you. And they would do that to get these perverts off the street. Yep. And they would actually have a squad that would do that. And, you know, I mean, to us today, that's entrapment.
But, well, I mean, entrapment even went further than that. I mean, they would sometimes expose themselves.
Oh, my God.
I mean, in like a restaurant area or something like that, or a park, they would actually lead you on by exposing themselves. And when you thought, oh, well, this is fine, boom, then they'd lock you. Yeah. Just as you went to touch or something like that, you were locked up.
So the idea of, I mean, this is in our living history, that people, and you know, we read about history of people like Oscar Wilde or people who had suffered chemical castration in England. Turing was the fellow who solved the enigma. Alan Turing in the 40s, that the fellow that saved millions of lives in World War II because he was gay was chemically castrated and eventually took his own life. This is not that far in our past. Yeah. And you wanted to talk a little bit about the Pink Triangle, which is maybe a piece of gay history that some younger people aren't familiar with.
Yeah, definitely. The Holocaust. The Holocaust people, if the folks, the Nazis thought they were gay, they would put an upside-down pink triangle on their sweatshirts or jackets, whatever they wore. And then later on, gay people took it as a symbol. Usually now it's like a lesbian symbol, but we have it upwards now. But during the Holocaust, if you were gay, that's how they tagged you.
They were dragged off to the concentration camps, and that was one of the groups that was a targeted minority. Along, I mean, you had they were after the Jews, they were after communists, they were after gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, but the gays, and they again. A history of torture, and they were the lowest of the low in the concentration camps. It wasn't until 1978 that the German government gave reparation to the gay victims of the Holocaust. It was years and years later.
Better late than never?
Still.
It's awful.
It's amazing. When you think about it, 1978 wasn't that long ago.
No. Were you born yet, Kevin? Nope.
All right, so it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. So Paula, that's why I don't say last name. Sorry, Paula. Paula says hi. Lashia says hello. Thank you guys. I appreciate you all tuning in. No questions yet? Anybody have any questions? Just put it in, and I'll keep checking it out and reading it. So gay bars. What used to be around here? What was it like for you when you were young and coming out, swagging?
New Bedford actually only had, when I came out at age 18, New Bedford only had one gay bar, which happened to be a lesbian bar. Yeah. And it was in the Wells Street Square area, which has not all been torn out now for the highways. It was called the Homeland. God, it's been so long now. Homeland? Not Homeland. Home Base? Home Base. Home Base. Yeah. And it was kind of a tough bar. It was a tough crowd. I had a friend that said, "Come on, we're going to go for a drink at the bar in New Bedford." And got in there because it was all women, and these were hard-working women that worked at the fish docks or in the cutting, the fillet industry and stuff like that. We walked in and like all the eyes turned on, and they all looking at us like, "What the hell are you doing in our bar?" It's like. My friends, there's my friend. So as soon as she said, they're okay, guys, like they thought we were just guys walking into a women's bar. So that was okay. And then a few bars opened up after that in New Bedford, and some of them were open for quite a few years. There was the R&R, which was the old French croquet club. It was owned by a husband and wife, and the French croquet club wasn't getting members anymore. They decided to turn it into a bar, and the gay community took it over as the gay bar and became known as the R&R. Then on Acushnet Avenue,
but wasn't there something about a secret knock or something at the French?
Yeah, in the very, very beginning, you had to do a knock, but that disappeared very quickly. Then there was the meeting place on Acushnet Avenue, which became what was the name of it?
4 Reasons.
Huh?
Four Seasons.
Four Seasons, right. It was a meeting place first, then it became the Four Seasons. The only problem there was, as you exited the bar at closing time,
Yep.
you were being screamed and yelled at by cars going by, you know, you faggots, you're this, you're that, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you get kind of harassed when you were coming in and out of that bar. And then, of course, Puzzles opened up, which was more in a secluded area.
Yeah.
But you didn't escape things over there. I mean, a lot of times your cars got vandalized, and you'd come out and find all four tires slashed, or somebody would key your car or something. And they were always kind of in tough areas, so it's hard to...
So, were you around when the Puzzles attack occurred? Do you have any
I
friends
wasn't.
that were
I
part of
wasn't
that?
physically there. No, I was here, but I wasn't at the bar that night.
Yeah. So I know I've said it on the show before, it'll be a quick story because I say it quite a bit. In February of 2006, a young man went into our local gay bar. We had two, and one was Puzzles, and he had a fake ID and went in and asked if, bought a drink and asked if this was a local gay bar, and then proceeded to hatchet and try and shoot some of the patrons. Fortunately for us, nobody was seriously injured, but nobody died. But people were seriously injured. And we survived that, thank God. Unfortunately, the bar did not survive. They ended up changing it to Rainbow's End, and it just never survived that.
Can I say
Please.
about that? The butch thing that I was cutting wood in the fields, and I have a farm, and came in, and we were able to organize the vigil for it.
Yeah.
And Scott Lang was mayor at the time in New Bedford, and up until that time, I had not really appreciated him, but he was amazing, and he stood with the bar, he stood with the gay community. I think he even came in and spoke to the bar, and then it was reported in the Bay Windows, which was one of the gay papers, that a hot-looking bartender put Gloria Gaynor's "I Will Survive" after he spoke and left it. And if you know Scott, I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but he's straight-laced, lawyerly type of guy, and someone in a tank top probably was putting Gloria, "I Will Survive" on the jukebox.
Oh, that's funny.
But that was an amazing time, and we, as Marriage Equality, were organized, and we were able to orchestrate the vigil, and also we took it to another level, and we didn't want to be the victim of the week or the victim of the month.
Yeah.
But we did want to address violence against the gay community. It was a hot-button issue because marriage was being debated, and what we felt was it was really important for people to calm it down. Because when people were saying that we didn't have the same rights, it opens it up for violence.
Yeah.
And for people to understand that. And Scott Lang was amazing because he asked the religious leaders of this community to speak positively about gay people that Sunday. And some people had really difficult time doing that. But they would say things like, those without saying, "Don't cast the first stone." I mean, whatever they could do.
Yeah.
But it toned it down. And we did an anti-violence forum. Liz DiCarlo, John Vasconcellos, some really amazing people put some work together. The editor of the paper, the chief of the police, elder services, the mayor, all the mucky mucks were there. And we had people orchestrated where they came forward and talked about what it was like to be gay, what it was like to have violence upon you because of it. And I think hearts and minds were really changed during that. One city councilman came out.
Yep. Yeah.
All the Pauls were sitting together, and I think they almost fell over because this guy emotionally came out.
Right in front of everybody.
Right in front of everybody.
Yep. Like, knock, knock.
One kid told the story about being kicked out from his home because he was gay and his parents not welcoming him back, which was just heartbreaking. So I think for those in this community, we should be extremely proud that we suffered violence. We did not respond in kind. We did not respond in hatred back.
Yep.
But we also did not take it. We stood forward and we asked for change, and we moved hearts and minds forward. And I think we did a good thing.
I agree. So Liz had actually gave our youth center some blackboards with the newspaper articles for marriage equality and that event. So if you have if we have another open house, we usually have one every year at MBA Langley, our kids will be able to see that history. It's actually in our youth center right now. So that's something that we don't pass down, so we have it right now in our Perfect Place Community Center, which is terrific. I actually have a question from, oh God help me, you guys, these names are killing me. It's K-A-I-Y-A. Kaya? What do you feel are some of the worst stereotypes you've heard or experienced now or back when you were younger about our community?
Oh, stereotypes are always the limp-wristed, always the limp-wristed, the very high feminine voice, sort of swishing, a swish walk, type of thing. And, I mean, there were some out there, yes. But, when I was, when I came out, most of it was closeted. I mean, I worked for IBM. I had to play the straight role. I mean, you just, you got a girlfriend, you're going to get married, all that stuff. No, but there were some that the stereotypes were, the very swishy, high voice, high squilling voice, feminine dressing, maybe a scarf around the neck or something like that. Oh yeah, that was the stereotype.
He's waiting.
I'm ready. There's a great movie called The Celluloid Closet, and I would suggest it for anyone.
What is it?
It's called The Celluloid Closet.
Celluloid Closet, okay.
And it talks about how we were represented. Thank you. There we go. Represented
in films,
and TV.
Yeah.
And it was exactly what Leo was saying. We were all like Uncle Arthur in Bewitched.
Yeah.
We were like Charles Nelson Riley, some of these old actors that people don't even know, but they were always the screaming queen, the killer, or the predatory lesbian was always a favorite as well. We had to die at the end of the movie. There was nothing. The first one that came out, would you remember Soap? Was a late night TV show. They had a gay character, Bill Crystal, who was not femmy, and in the show he dated a football player, and this was like
taboo
novel. I mean, it was like, it was cutting edge TV, and so you look at how we were portrayed in film and by the popular media. It was horrific until probably Philadelphia, the movie where Tom Hanks and Antonio Banderas.
That was more AIDS related, though.
But they still portrayed. They were straight actors.
True.
You couldn't be a gay actor because that would kill your career, even in the '90s. Correct. All these gay actors, we were talking about that earlier, who lived these straight lives. But they were straight actors who played gay characters and survived as actors, and that was the first one. It was almost like a moral play. It was. I remember seeing it, going, "Oh my God, this is like so to straight people. Like, please get the idea." There wasn't much nuance to it, but it was the first film where we were portrayed as normal. And then, I mean, there probably were other. It was the first blockbuster, and then TV shows like Will and Grace.
That was groundbreaking.
But Will never had a real boyfriend. Will never really had sex, did he? And then Queer as Folk and things like that.
True.
So
I want to thank Alan. Come on our show.
But think about it. For those folks who are asking about the stereotypes, and think about how we were portrayed by the media.
Oh, absolutely.
And then that's how we reflected back. And one of the things that is fascinating that could be a study in itself is that we used to speak in code. And then people would talk about their boyfriends in a feminine gender, or people would have, they would talk about a beard, and a beard was, for guys in business, it would be your date, and I had them, that you'd be your female friend who would go with you to parties for business, so you would look straight.
Because you had to.
And it was your beard.
You had to, Your beard?
Beard?
I never heard that.
Anyway, but those are things that we would all do. So trying to, and I think the kids now are so liberated. I was talking with some of the straight farm boys that work on the farm, and it's such a fluid today. Kids are much more fluid, and they're much more open about it.
I mean, in my day, you always had a girlfriend that you could bring as your date. I mean, she knew you were gay, and she would go on. If you had to go on a company outing or something, or you had to bring a date, you always had your favorite female friend that you always brought along because she would play the game with you. You had to. Other than that, you probably would not get promoted. You probably would not, be considered for any kind of a, job.
I agree. I went on Olivia. Olivia's all women, by the way, Olivia, and I was able to go on a resort in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I met a couple from Florida. And again, this is 2007, and they both work for the same company. They have two separate households. They live in one. One works in HR and one works in management. If they find out they're gay, they get fired.
Sure.
So, I mean, our equality here is amazing, but when you go other places, and I went with 12 of us, and I was a single then, and 5 people were coupled up, so 2 of us were singles, and I kept going back and forth to the singles crowd, for partying, I go back to the group, they go, where do you keep going? And I said, oh, I'm going to hang out with my friends. I go, you came with other people? I'm like, well, yeah. They go, how many? I go, there's 12 of us. They go, you know 12 lesbians? And I'm like, you don't? And I'm like, wow, I mean, we're so ahead, so far behind.
Yeah, we are very fortunate to be, I think, as Leo said, Bedford is...
New Bedford has always been a very gay-friendly city, really. Very tolerant, very, very tolerant. Yeah.
So I want to start for an ad because I didn't do the ad yet. So if anybody would like to, this is our 12th episode, even though it was advertised last week was our 12th. We had the snowstorm. This is our 12th episode. So we're actually looking for ad and commercial time, or air time. So if you're interested in trying to do some ad work for us to kind of help keep this show going and pay for the production, everything that I do, everything I do, I hate when I say that, everything I do for free. However, we need to be able to pay for production and more shows and things for our community, and 50% of the proceeds for the show actually goes back to the South Coast LGBTQ network, which helps and pays for the tutoring that Eileen is going to be doing tomorrow night. We actually started Sober and Out, that's on Sundays from 8 a.m., 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at a perfect place. So again, it's leo@newbedfordguide.com. Please, we need ad space. It's a 30-second spin. We'll be able to talk whenever you want to. There's actually more venues that you can pick, so if somebody wanted to come in and spotlight and sit down and talk to me about their business and what they wanted to do, you could do that as well. I can't tell you what brand of water this is, but if you'd like to sponsor us, and we'll have your beverage on our table and talk about it like you see, at The Voice, I mean the real, the TV show The Voice and American Idol, we'd be more than glad to do that. So we really thought that talking about LGBT history would be a great topic to talk about. We'll talk about some of the violence, and 2 weeks' show from now will be violence towards LGBTQ. But next week's show is actually going to be HIV and AIDS. We actually have Linda Spinner will be on our show, a survivor of HIV. Patty Serpa will be co-hosting with us. She was one of the members of AIDS Inc., which is A stands for Association of Individuals Dedicated and Sincere. So I just want to kind of talk to you guys about how that started in 1991 or so. Brian Ponce, the bartender at our local gay bar that's still there in the place, we just celebrated our 35th anniversary this past summer. Had a big-ass, kick-ass barbecue. DJs outside, the 9 yards, celebrating the people that have passed away, as well as 21-year-olds were sitting down with 70-year-olds. It's pretty cool at the bar. But Brian Ponce had a friend that Brian had raised some money and was giving it to the AIDS community, and one of his friends, Jerry, needed some money, and Brian's like, oh, I just gave it out. They got to have some. Well, excuse me, back then, money came in and money goes out. So Brian's friend, Jerry, was like, well, there isn't any money left. So, and Brian, I'm sorry if I'm getting the story a little bit wrong, but it's been a lot of years. So Brian decided to start AIDS Inc., and we have been helping people in our Fall River, New Bedford area for 25 plus years. Probably about 2 years ago, it dissipated. The group been helping people infected with HIV for 25 plus years. So HIV is huge. We're going to talk about a lot of that next week with Linda and Serpa. Patty Serpa is going to co-host, and we actually will have Greater New Bedford Health as well as Seven Hills Behavioral Health talking about what's going on in our community and to see where we're at with HIV right now. But you had some friends that were survivors and non-survivors of the HIV and stereotypes in the 80s?
I had a very good friend who was a certified nursing assistant and worked for the different agencies in New Bedford. On an hourly basis, they would put him with different patients. And in 1990-91, female nurses would not attend to an AIDS patient. Absolutely would not. They would, nope, I'm not going to go in. He would take every single AIDS patient they could give him, and I mean he was a godsend. He helped so many people. Joseph Costa, he just helped everybody. He just was amazing, an amazing guy. But we lost a lot of friends. Unfortunately, because of the stigma coming out and saying, hey, I'm HIV positive, a lot of people would not announce it, wouldn't tell their friends that they were, and then eventually they would get sick, and like, what's wrong with you? Like, I'm positive. And we lost, oh my God, I can't even count how many friends we lost, and it was amazing. The number of people, I mean, we used to have annual parties, we used to have an annual Halloween party, and through the years, people started dying off because they were dying from AIDS and stuff, and it was very sad, very, very sad.
I came out in 1992, and the average life expectancy of a gay man in 1992 was 44 years old. Yeah. And your chance of getting AIDS was 50%. Yeah. The papers, because there was no internet at the time, you would get newspapers from Boston, were all full of obituaries, and they were guys in their 20s and 30s. Guys my age didn't even exist. And I was thinking about it today because with PrEP and some other drugs that are coming out, we're beginning to see the end, I think.
Yep.
And what an amazing thing that is. But for guys our age, we've known so many who have died, or people who have suffered with the disease. And that there's a lot of us that should be around that aren't.
Yeah.
And I also, it was an amazing time, I think, for people to realize what it was like for gay history in 1980 to 1990, before the cocktail happened, where friends were burying friends, taking care of friends. People were coming to the cities because it was a gay ghetto, getting sick and dying. And people's families were coming in, they would have to be greeted by someone telling them that their son was gay, their son was sick. It was.
Well, and there was a general panic in the public also. I mean, there were people that, this is a gay disease, and they didn't want to get anywhere near somebody that was gay. They just, if you're gay, don't get near me, you're probably infected. And I mean, there was a whole stigma, a horrible, horrible stigma about being gay in that particular time frame also.
Well, I did some statistic works from the 70s and 80s. Gay men began requesting and requiring equal rights. And New York and San Francisco had the most outbreaks. It said 71% were, out of 3,064 people, they said 71% were bisexual or gay, reported AIDS, 42% were from New York City, and 12% was from San Francisco, 8% were from LA. But 71% were from New York and San Francisco.
It was crazy.
I mean, the sad thing, too, was the fact that, President Reagan was president at the time of the AIDS outbreak. Yeah. And he was asked to, fund, AIDS research. And I think he okayed a very paltry sum. I think it was something like a few $1 million. And one of his very good friends, Elizabeth Taylor, the actress, she embarrassed him because she started the first AIDS drive. She was responsible for bringing in millions and millions of dollars, and she got most of the actors in Hollywood to get behind her, and they would do benefits and stuff. I mean, it was amazing. She's dead and gone now, but they should put a plaque up for her because she was amazing for the research.
Cindy Lauper has the True Colors program that she does. And, so there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that thankful for that. Go ahead.
But back then, with Reagan, he never mentioned the word AIDS.
No.
Yeah.
It came out as a gay disease. We thought then that if it had been another minority, or it had been straight men, then there would have been an amazing outbreak of effort. But we didn't trust the government, and no one knew what was safe and wasn't safe. Was oral sex safe or was it not? We didn't know because the government wasn't.
No specifics.
No specifics. And they were, ACT UP was an amazing group. They chained themselves to demand drug testing and to push drugs forward and to get things going. They chained themselves to places like Wall Street and set off boat horns in protest. Gay guys doing this. They had nothing to lose because they were dying. They chained themselves. You remember the guy that chained himself to a desk of a live news feed?
No.
They laid down in St. Patrick's Church because the Catholic Church was very judgmental about it at the time.
Yeah.
So there was all this activism that was going up, and if people want to research it and look at it, there's a movie called As the Band Played On, and Larry Kramer, the AIDS activist, talks about it. But it was an amazing time because you didn't trust the government as a gay person, because what had they done for you except discriminate against you and throw you in jail?
And who do you trust?
You didn't.
Exactly.
And so there was a lot of fear, and there was a lot of just sadness. But it did push the movement ahead, because people had to come out. People like Rock Hudson, who people said, oh my God, Rock Hudson, the stud muffin of all time, was gay.
Yep.
And other people came out because they were sick, and there was a, thank God for the lesbians, I'll have to say that, because, are we right? Women stood up and took care of dying men, and they stood up for the gay rights, and it really pushed things forward.
25 years ago, I was living in Cape and T-Ticket in Falmouth, and one of my girlfriend's close friends said, listen, I've been living with my parents, and I'm going to die soon, and I don't want my parents to take care of me. Will you take care of me? Will you give me my morphine? Will you help us out? So we thought about it. We said, yes, we would. So he decided that 25 years ago, he says, you know what, I'm just going to go to P-Town. So he went to P-Town to the AIDS groups over there, and that's where he had his final days. I'm going to cry. I'm a wimp. You guys know I am. I've cried before on the show. But it's hard, you know.
No, it's very hard.
It's hard.
Yep.
And it affected us all. And,
absolutely. And, you know, it wasn't, and the money doesn't stop pouring out until they really, until straight people started getting it. And it's funny because it started with straight people over in Africa.
Right.
And they've proved it through, you know, through testing and stuff.
You know,
and so we were not the first ones to get it. We were just more sexually active. That was the thing. So.
The one point I'll say that 100 years from now, people will look back at and I come from an evangelical background and church background, but people were joyous that gay men were dying.
Yes, they were.
Gay men's disease, good, get out.
Yeah, they deserve it.
Proves that God hates us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was maniacal. And you look back on it, and in history, I hope they look back on it in judgment and say, what were these people thinking? It's the last thing from Christ, as far away from Jesus' teachings as it could be. But these people were just joyous that we were dying. And it wasn't until the evangelicals in Africa, where AIDS is a very, very serious issue, started dying, that they started to be interested in it. And all of a sudden, they were concerned and praying and doing all this other stuff. But I just remember that joyfulness and thinking, you bastards.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I hold that to account. I mean, I don't hold it, I forgive it, but I still hold it to account and say, I want to remember that, and I want people to remember that.
So one of the things I want you guys to know, for some people may have tuned in earlier and got off and just started tuning in, Andy is actually doing like a video or an audio of LGBTQ history and people that were around the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So if you have anybody that would want to be an interviewee and be videotaped or audio taped, it's Andy, well, it's not Andy Pollock, but that's his name, Silverbrook Farm at Comcast.
Farm.
Silverbrook Farm at Comcast.net.
Great.
I missed that the first time.
No worries.
Let me get my pen there. It's important to keep our history and letting our youth know, and other people as well around, you know, our area of what's going on. So we have, Kay again says, oh, love Brian, but I don't know who Brian is. So I don't know if we're talking about Brian.
LaPlace?
Brian Ponce.
Oh, Brian Ponce, thank you, sorry. Thanks for shopping. Woo, we're on Reddit. But yeah, you know, talking about LaPlace, I mean, when we have a death in our family, when we get married, when we have our kids, our grandkids, everyone shows up at LaPlace and has a drink. They've been there for quite a while. We actually had Ginger Ale, one of our local drag queens, who is part of the Imperial Court of Rhode Island. They did a fundraiser two Saturdays ago now for the network and raised $612. Thank you, Imperial Court of Rhode Island. And that money goes to help fund some of the things that we do in our community. So LaPlace is always there, you know. So Pam and Lucy, thank you so much for that.
I think the wonderful things that have morphed in for our community in New Bedford is the youth work, and applaud the people who are doing that. John Mason, who worked in the schools, getting Gay Straight Alliances going, and also the work with our LGBT elders, people who have experienced rough times and have gotten together. They get together,
The last Wednesday of the month, they have a supper club at the Fairhaven Council on Aging. Yep.
For those of you who want to go.
Yes.
So those are great things, and I think part of history is that we don't want to repeat the negative, but we want to move forward with the positive. And Leo and I have talked about what we'd like to say to kids, the younger generation that is coming up. And I think Leo said, I don't want to quote you, but keep fighting.
Yep. Keep fighting for your rights, because, being as old as I have been in the gay scene, it's, first of all, I never in a million years ever thought that you'd be able to marry.
Are you married?
No, my partner died, unfortunately.
Okay.
4 months before it got passed in Massachusetts. We would have gotten married had he lasted another 4 months, but unfortunately died young. No, he fought for the marriage equality also, with Liz and the rest of them when he was, and he mentored gay kids. I mean, he was instrumental working with some groups for teens in high school and stuff, and mentoring. They did mentoring programs through the state of Massachusetts. Never in a million years would have thought that that would have happened. I mean, if you'd asked me for in those years, absolutely no, we'll never see that. But here we are.
We have a show coming up. Eileen Dugas is behind the scenes as well as one of the producers of the show and co-host of the show. We have shows up until May right now that are programs scheduled to go, and one of them is federal benefits. We want to talk about that because at any moment it could be gone again.
Absolutely.
What we have could be gone because of who's in the White House. And this isn't a political show. This isn't a what kind of show, but if you voted for Trump, you voted for Trump. If you didn't vote for Trump, you didn't vote for Trump. I do not want my rights gone.
However, Mike Pence, Donald Trump has been very quiet about gay rights. He's been very bad about transgendered rights in the military. My husband had to leave the military to get married because it was a don't ask, don't tell issue. He would have lost all his benefits. He would have lost his pension. 12,000 soldiers lost benefits. Everything gone because of don't ask, don't tell. The transgendered ban coming back into the military, that's shades of discrimination that we can't allow to happen again. Mike Pence, however, is dangerous. He has advocated for not only removing AIDS funding, but teaching abstinence rather than AIDS funding. Things
shock
therapy or religious discrimination, like we can't go get a cup of coffee because they don't want to serve a gay person.
Yeah, we talked about that last week at our youth. Kevin, it was actually one of Kevin's topics.
These are things that cannot be tolerated. We cannot allow it. How do we fight these things? We vote. If you have not registered to vote, we need to learn from our past. We need to not accept the things that we see coming, and we need to vote for change.
Absolutely.
If you're not registered to vote, please register to vote. So
that's a good segue into the Pulse nightclub attack, and then we'll talk about what happened, the shooting that happened in Florida. Yeah, honey. 10 minutes left?
Well, like 7 minutes.
It's almost an hour gone? Woohoo! Kevin's my timekeeper tonight because Eileen's not here. Thanks, Kevin. So the Pulse attack happened on June 12th of 2016. And somebody went into a bar, killed 49 people and injured 58. And that hit major news media. We all know about it. We talked about it on our show a couple times. The reason I wanted to kind of talk about that is when the shooting just happened in Florida last month, the Pulse nightclub folks actually went down there and helped the kids and talked to them and said, we've been through it. Yes, we're gay. And yes, it was a gay bar that it happened at. And I thought it was really cool that they had done that. So when I had seen on TV was Emma Gonzalez speaking, I didn't know she was, well, maybe I knew she was gay. I don't know, But no one was, oh, she's she's bisexual and she's this and she's that. And I'm like, so what? And again, we're not a political show. This is my personal feelings. But for these kids in 1 month to do that much, 1 month, to have a march, to say, you know what, this is how I feel, and this is,
Tracy,
amazing.
You're right, and we learned this, just to bring it back to the history for marriage equality. Political action starts with us. It's amazing to get 5 people into a representative. They realize that there are 50 people behind them who should be there, or that these people are speaking for. one or two votes matters.
Yep.
Freetown just voted down by
And
26.
it's very important at the state level.
Yes,
I mean,
extremely.
and more women have got to get into politics.
Yeah.
They really do. The more women that get in, it evens out our representation.
When
We
I
really
was
have to
doing
have
some of
that.
the research for this show and listening to what was going down in Florida, they said only 18% of 18-year-olds or so vote their first year. And with what just happened with the march, I'm just wondering, even if 25% vote, what if 50% vote? And again, I'm
that
not
would
saying
be
which way you
wonderful.
need to vote. I'm not saying you need to
Just
vote right
vote.
or left. Just
Vote.
do what you
Vote.
research what
I mean,
you feel.
it's a right that, people
Yeah.
sacrifice their lives for
Yeah.
this country to still have the right to vote.
Well,
And a lot of, I've talked to a lot of millennials, and they're
Yeah.
like, my vote's not gonna count. Yes, it does.
It does.
If it doesn't count so much at the presidential level, it'll definitely count at the local level, and we need to get more local people, and interested in our causes and stuff, and they're gonna fight for us
And
hopefully in
Okay.
Washington.
We found that if we fight for them, they'll fight for us. And I've held signs for people that I would never thought they held signs because they changed their vote on marriage.
Yep.
We were out there. Our friends, some of our friends who will be, some of our friends that you'd be surprised were out there holding signs.
yeah.
We're doing that.
Yep.
But we did it for the right to get married. And I think kids cannot be complacent. And it's wonderful. I was at the march in Washington.
I had to work.
I know,
Yeah.
but it's so wonderful to see them, and whether they're gay or straight, you can't even tell really, but they're just so energized, and it's wonderful to see that movement keep going.
True.
Because the guys that were at the Pulse, the Pulse attack, and other people said, we didn't do enough from Sandy Hook, we didn't do enough from the Pulse, we didn't, but this, right now, this is the movement. This is the one that's gonna get something done. So I'm hoping, that, again, I wanna I wanna be able to carry a weapon. I believe in the Second Amendment. Again, my opinion, guys, what do we need an assault weapon for? I know we're talking about LGBTQ history.
So something that we'd like to say again, I would echo Leo's sentiment, is that we can't become complacent. We have to become active. We can be peaceful, but peaceful is not passive. Peaceful is active. So putting yourself in places that make a difference, like a demonstration, is an active part of peaceful resistance. And that, for gay people, is very important, because we change minds one mind at a time. As we come out, we tell people that we're gay, they realize that we're just like them, we pay a mortgage, we go to work every day, we serve them coffee, we do whatever. They realize that we have the same needs and wants and desires. Then they realize that our rights are equal and they won't be taken away from us.
Right, we're not looking for extra,
Right.
extras. We just want to be treated equally,
Equally.
like everybody else.
So I said earlier that we have shows scheduled basically up until May right now. So audience, if you guys think you want a show that we haven't done yet, you can email me or Eileen. So I'm TRACI@sclgbtqnetwork.org or Eileen at sclgbtqnetwork.org. Again, we have shows lined up now until middle of May right now. We have an agenda going on. If you guys want to place a commercial or an ad space on our show, and I call it a TV show because technically it's really not a TV show, but I call it one. Please email Leo at thebedfordguide.com. And again, next week's conversation is going to be on HIV and AIDS. We're going to dive more into what's going on in the community, what's going on around us, where people can get help and resources and support. So again, that's about it. Thank you guys for coming on the show, and we'll see you next week. Take care.